Hello guys, welcome to the video. In this one, I want to talk about for each loop. For each loop allows you to iterate through items in a collection, such as array or list, without needing to manage the index of the element manually. Simply to say, it allows you to do something for each element in the list or array. And I want to use it to find closest enemy to the tower. But before we do that, let me give you a quick example. We're going to open start method. And I'm gonna type for each, and then we need to open parentheses. And over here, first of all, you define a variable that you're gonna use in this for each loop. For example, we're gonna work with transforms. So I'm gonna type transform. Then you give it a name, and let's say I'm gonna name it as enemy. And then you tell this for each loop in which list or array you want it to work. And for us, we're gonna do in enemy list. So it's pretty simple. For each transform with the name enemy, which is defined over here, it can be anything, can be enemy, can be tea, can be banana, whatever you like. All right, we just need it to control it. So I'm gonna name it as enemy. So again, we say for each transform enemy in enemy list, do something. And as example, let's debug position of each enemy. Let's do debug log enemy dot position plus let's do message. Actually, let's do it like that. Let's do enemy dot name plus positioned at plus enemy dot position. So now we created a simple for each loop that will check each enemy in the list, and it will tell us the name and where it's positioned. Let's go back to Unity. Let's go to play mode. And we can see 4 messages in the console. We can see enemy positioned at this position, enemy 1 at this position, enemy 2 at this position, and enemy 3 at this position. And you can do anything with this for each loop. You can maybe destroy them if you have some sort of explosion. Then you can use for each loop to damage every enemy in the radius of explosion. Maybe you want to heal all of your party members or something like that. Then you can use for each loop for each party member and heal them up. So for each can be used for many purposes. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to use for each to find closest enemy to the tower. It's gonna be a little bit of a brain twister, but believe me, there is no easier way to do this than the way I'm gonna show you right now. Let's make a method, private void find closest enemy. And maybe, as example, let's do not void, but let's do transform. So now we know this method supposed to return a transform. Now, when we're looking for the closest object, we first need to have a maximum distance that can be there. For that, we're gonna do float closest distance equals to float maximum value. We just have a big value. We need it to compare it to each enemy, and then if we find something that is closer, we're gonna update this value. Let's just type the script, and then I'm gonna explain how it works. All right. We're gonna do transform closest enemy equals to null. Then we're gonna do for each loop transform enemy in enemy list. Then inside of this for each loop, we're gonna check the distance between transform position of the tower. Actually, we're gonna use tower's head and enemy. Wait, how do we draw the attack radius? From a transform position. Okay, we're gonna use transform position then. Over here, we're gonna do float distance equals to vector3 dot distance from enemy dot position to transform position. So now we've got the distance between tower and the enemy. Then we're gonna check if the distance we just got is less than closest distance, which was the maximum value before, then we're gonna update the value because we found new closest enemy. We're gonna do closest distance is now equals to distance. And then we're gonna do closest enemy equals to enemy, like that. And after that, we're just gonna return closest enemy. So basically, method is done, it is finished. But before we test it, let me explain how it works. Let's say we have a tower here, and we have one enemy over here. By default, these values over here have a maximum distance and closest enemy transform is empty. So there is nothing there. And then we're doing check for each element in the list. And when we're doing the first check, we get in the distance over here between enemy and the tower. And let's say this was the first enemy we found in the enemy list. We get in the distance between tower and the enemy. And now let's say this distance is 5. Then we check in if this distance is lower than closest distance, which was maximum value before. And if it is, then it means we found new closest enemy. In that case, we update reference to the closest enemy over here, and also we update closest distance value over here to a newly found number. We need it for next iteration of the for each loop. So now let's say we found the closest enemy that was here, it was number 5. We did assign this enemy into this reference of closest enemy now. And then we doing next step of the for each loop, because we have more than one element in the for each. Now, because we did found the first one, we have this value set to, let's say 5, right? Now it's not maximum value, now it is 5. And this was the enemy that we found. And then we found a new enemy in the for each loop over here. We check in the distance to that enemy, and it appears the distance is, for example, 7. 7 is not less than closest distance we've got last time, because last time we had 5. Because of that, we're not going to run this if statement, we're not going to update the values, and we're going to skip to the next enemy in the list. Then let's say we found a new enemy in the list over here, and for this one, distance is 3. If that's the case, then this if statement will work, because 3 is less than 5. If that's the case, then we update value again for next check, and also we update closest enemy again, because we found new closest target. And now let me draw that again. Now we know that this is the closest enemy with the distance of 3. Because we know that, because we check the distance over here in the if statement, we're going to update closest distance value as well as a reference to the enemy. And now this one is not maximum value. Now this one is 3. And next time we find the next enemy in the list, let's say he is somewhere here, the distance could be something like, I don't know, random value, 8. And that's the bigger value than 3. And if that's the case, then we don't need to run this if statement again, because we already have the closest target. And after for each loop done with each enemy in the list, we just return in closest enemy, which we found through iteration, alright? And once again, I know this can be confusing. It's not really a super beginner stuff. It's more like, beginner plus. But sometimes we have to do a bit of a step forward into something difficult, because that's what pushes us to learn faster. So yeah, we have a method that finds closest enemy. Now let's go over here, and instead of looking for random enemy, we're gonna look for closest enemy. But this time we cannot just call a method like that, because it is not a void method. If you remember, this was a void over here, but this time we have a method that returns a transform. So essentially, once this method is done, as a result, it gives us a transform. And over here, instead of finding random enemy, we need to type enemy equals to find closest enemy. It's like saying enemy equals to this transform. And this transform is over here, which was found before in this for each loop. Now, lastly, once we find the closest enemy, we also need to remove it from the list. That is something we also should do. So let's type over here, if closest enemy not equals to null. If we found something, then take enemy list and remove closest enemy. And you probably noticed that this time we type in remove, not remove add, and it is because we're not using index, we're using the variable itself. So it's okay to type it like that. Now let's save it and let's go to Unity and place enemies in a similar way that I placed them in my example when I explained the distance. I'm gonna click over here, do the top view, then I'm gonna take one enemy, place him here, another one over here, another one maybe somewhere here, and another one over here. So if I'm not mistaken, I suppose that this enemy will be killed first, then this one, and this one, then this one, right? This is how they are placed. Okay, let's see this. Let's go to play mode. And we kill the closest enemy, then another one, then another one, and then the last one. Perfect. Very nice. It works. Now, there is something else to do. We have an attack range on the tower, and we better use it. So let's go to the script. And over here, when we check in the distance, we also want to be sure that this distance is within the attack range. It is very simple to do. We can just type AND condition, and then we need to be sure that this distance that we found is less or equals to the attack range. Okay, very good. Let's save it. Let's go back. And now let's place one of the enemies out of the attack distance. And now this enemy is out of the attack range, so it should be fine. Let's go and see this. Pew, pew, pew. And this one is pretty far, so it cannot do anything. What if enemy comes closer? Then pew. Okay, great. Now guys, I know this one is a bit complicated, I understand it very well, and I hope it makes sense to you. If it does not make any sense, just wait a bit. With experience, there's no doubt you will understand how it works, because we're gonna do something similar a lot in this course. Okay, so very good job you did, and I'll see you in the next video.